Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. This Sunday morning chat's a bit different because it's a working chat. In other words, I'm going to do stuff while I'm chatting. So you get to see part of a working day. This may end up too long, so what I might do is actually speed some of it up. And obviously I'll have to cut the soundtrack off, otherwise it'll like that. And we don't want that, do we? I'd love to get the Benny Hill music and add that to it, but copyright thing. Anyway, bits may be speeded up with some music added, with some chatty bits in between. But I've got a lot to do today, so I need to get on with it. So, first job is watering what I call my cooler lot. I don't mean cool as in wow, I mean cool as in don't like it too hot. And they got flushed last time, so they're going to get a very low level feed this time. And they're going to get a concoction. And the whole lot added together will not be very strong. Hang on, I've forgotten me towel. Can't have wet hands. There's a reason for that, because I use that hand to mix things up. And obviously I don't want to get my TDS meter or my pH meter actually wet. The only bit that gets wet is the bit that pokes in the water. Now, unfortunately, that tiny little sploot that I put in there is far too much. So I've been getting this quite a bit lately because I mixed up some more MSU fertilizer as a stock solution, which is in here, and obviously I've mixed it up a lot stronger than last time, so my guesswork is miles out at the moment. But as I've got a lot to water, mixing up a larger batch of a weak feed won't affect what I've got to do next. Right, now what? That was far too strong for the ones that are getting watered today, especially as I've got to add some more stuff in there. That's still a bit strong. If I was just going to use the MSU feed today, that would actually be okay. But as I want to put some extra bits in there, I need to get it down even more. I'll have to watch this, because this could constitute wasting water by having to water it down. It would be much better to start off with weak and put a little bit more feed in. Anyway, we will carry on regardless. Right, that'll do for that. So that's one lot. That's the MSU. Next we're going to add some of this. I've only just got this. This is calcium nitrate. It's in liquid form, and it won't get added to everything. That's if I can get the child lock off. There we go. Now I haven't got a clue how much of this I need to use, so I'm going to have to go incredibly careful and put the tiniest amount in. But it's supposed to end up being a percentage of what's already in there, if you see what I mean. I don't know how, that is just a few sploops, spots almost, but I want to see what that does. Then I can work out a rough idea of how much I'll need for future amounts. Okay, that stuff's quite strong. Never mind. I'm not going to water it down. Water it down again. Now this stuff, again, I haven't used this stuff before either. This is the seaweed stuff that I've got, liquid seaweed, which I won't be using every time, and I won't be using this every time. But my cooler lot have not had a lot of feed recently at all. I've been flushing them a bit. That's probably a bit, I don't know how much of this I need to use, but I bet this stuff stinks as well. I bet this whole lot now ends up too strong. It's the percentages, the mix I'm after really. Oh, that's not bad. Right, so we went from a TDS of 70 with the MSU, then the calcium nitrate took that up to 100 because it's not very strong stuff, there's a lot of filler in it, and then the seaweed stuff has taken it up to 120. So as a balance, that's somewhere near it. It's not an exact science once you start mixing stuff up, or it's certainly not for me, and especially when you look at sort of things like the seaweed stuff, because half the time they don't tell you what's in it, and it hasn't really got a strength to work with, so all you can do is add some in as a total percentage. Unfortunately, yet again, the total now is too high. So I'm happy with my percentages. All I need to do now is water it down. But I don't like a high TDS for these plants. I mean, there's Miltoniopsis in this group. You certainly don't want to dose those up too high. So I'm hoping this will now be somewhere around 100. 105, that'll do. That'll do nicely, in fact. And then all I need to do now is just check the pH. But with these pots, most of these are not in brand new media, they're in media that's getting on a bit. I won't say it's old, but nonetheless it would have the capability of lowering the pH within the pot. So I don't need to worry about getting my pH down too low. The pot will do it for me. So, I'm just, that water there is to stand that in. The pH meter is slow to react, and because it gets rinsed before it gets put away, the reading it last had on it would probably be about 7 to 7.5 ish. And the first thing that's got to happen is to get that pH meter down somewhere near what it's about to read. Otherwise it just takes too long splooping it around and sloshing it, trying to get a sensible reading. So I tend to just give it a dunk, and that gets it going, as I call it, gets it down somewhere near it. Well, let's get all my lids back on, because it does specifically say on this stuff to keep it tightly closed. Probably that means air affects it. Right. So what have we got here then? Not too high, I hope. If it's over 6.8, I'll drop it. But I reckon with what I've added in there, yeah, it's around 6.7. So no adjustment necessary this time. But once I've finished watering the cool pots, I may need to adjust the pH for what comes next. As I said, it depends what's in the pot. What am I doing here? Sorry. Working and talking at the same time is not ideal, but we'll see how we go. Right, that's got some stuff sorted out, and now I'll have to move the camera and get it set up. Oi, noisy! We don't need all that noise. What you been doing then? Hey, come and say hello then. I'll see if we can get you in. Come and say hello then. Who's that then? That's Fluffy Cat. He's been out and he's just come back home. Naughty cat. What's this then? What's this up here? What's this then? Come on then. I'm going to bury his head in his food dish. Right, I need to move the camera now, so I'll be back. Okay, well the idea is my bowls get sterilised with boiling water. These are basically the base of a halogen oven. The actual oven part, which is the lid, doesn't last forever, so obviously now and again I need a new one because they get used quite a lot. And I keep the bases, because this can go up to 250 degrees C, obviously it's perfectly fine with pouring boiling water in it, so that's how I sterilise my bowls and things. I use boiling water, give it a swirl round and chuck it away, because it's tap water obviously. Right, so now the idea is, yes, I share water, but I don't share too much. So I start with a small portion of what we mixed up in there, and then get the plants out, and I suspect some of these won't actually get watered because they'll still be wet, but we do at least get to look at them. Now that's still quite wet, so that won't get watered. This is Masdevallias snowbird, and since it was repotted some time ago, it still hasn't grown any roots, so it's only just surviving. But there is new growth. I just don't see anything down in the pot, so we'll miss that one. I update my notes afterwards. I've got a good enough memory that with a low number of plants. Now this is the other division of the same Masdevallia in a much smaller pot. We do have new growths coming. I still don't see a pot full of roots, but this one's won't go. It's not quite dry, but it won't last until the next watering. It would be bone dry, so we'll water that one. Put that to one side. Next. That Masdevallia, that's just a hybrid. That's put on quite a lot of new growth lately, and as you can see it's still soaking wet, so we're not watering that one. It's getting like that. It's just that time of year. What's this one doing? Well, this one's in pure moss. This is a Masdevallia crossed with a Dracula, Vecchiana crossed with Dracula Hawley-eye, or Hawley-eye. Doesn't seem to be taking off, but it is producing roots and new growths. Struggled to get this one going, but I must admit, since it went in the moss, it seems to be putting out more new growths more frequently and not dropping so many old leaves. A lot of the damage on the leaves was already there when I got it. But again, it doesn't need watering. Get up in there. Right, now we've got some little stuff. That is a little Restrepia antanifera, and it's Frontino giant, it says here. Well, it's not going to be giant anything on a plant that big, and that's still wet. So I'll make your life easy when things are still wet. This is a little Restrepiodes that was a kiki that came off the mother plant that I gave away because it just didn't bloom and didn't do anything for me, basically. Didn't float my boat. But that's a kiki that's growing on that will go to somebody else eventually because I don't want it. That's putting out a lot of new roots lately, but it's still wet. A lot of this is to do with last time they were flushed. So they were really, really soaked. And as a consequence, they're not drying off because of the low temperatures, which is good for these plants. Keeping them moist is good. And this is another little Restrepia. This is Ephipium, says here. And this one's only just started to grow. I inherited this with no roots, so getting this going has been a struggle. But it's coming on, and this one is bordering on dryness, so that one can have a drop. I won't soak it completely, this is what I'd call a top up, just a trickle. Just watch it go down the sides, and when it's nearly down to the bottom, that'll do. Because it hasn't got a good root system, and the bottom of the pot's still damp, so it only needs a little tiny bit, that one. Next, this one looks wet as well. Yeah, this is Restrepia gutulata, and yes, that is still wet. As I said, these all had a good flush. Right, I do them a shelf at a time. I get them all out, water those that need it, and then put them all back. I wait till the end and they don't get in my way. So I'll stop the camera while I get this lot put away, and we'll start on the next shelf up. Right, next shelf up is some bigger stuff. Miltoniopsis. Slightly damp but drying at the top, and it's got a lot of new roots at the top. So you can have some. These just should not dry out, basically, under any circumstances. Miltoniopsis, they really should always have some moisture around the roots. But if you get them too soggy, the roots will rot, so it's a happy balance. And the way to get a reasonable balance with these is to have a mix that's not too compact, so that there's always air around, but holds enough moisture. Now this is a yellow hybrid that I was given, and this latest growth is pushing on really, really well. There's still no sign of a spike. I don't see any reason why that growth shouldn't bloom. Right, so that's that one. These go down on the floor, otherwise they're in the way for the rest. This is Junette. This has bloomed a couple of times. Again, it's got a reasonable new growth coming on. Nowhere near full size yet, so that won't be blooming for a bit. The mix I use for these is small bark and sphagnum moss, and I usually have some larger bark near the bottom of the pot to stop it going soggy again. You know, these are all air cone pots, so they should have good air around the bottom, and no trays, no drip trays. They're on an open mesh shelf, so without a drip tray I've got airflow into the base of the pots. These are fussy little tykes, and I'm prepared to fuss with them because I like them so much. Even though they don't grow brilliantly for me. You always keep my eye out for bugs. Any leaves that are dead, get them off. That one is starting to get quite dry. And this is Her Alexander. Miltoniopsis Her Alexander. Got nicknamed Donald, so it looks like it's got a Donald Duck cartoon face, apparently. This has got quite a few new growths coming. I'd expect this one's going to come back into bloom reasonably soon. It's got double new growth here. It's putting up that one, and it's started the next one already. This one's coming up in the middle of the plant, and there's another young one round here. So it's quite a bit of new growth on this one, and it's grown quite a few roots since it was repotted, so I think this one should get a bit of strength back into it now. And the last Miltoniopsis is an unknown hybrid. This one's a deep sort of purple red with the water splash pattern on it. It's very, very attractive Miltoniopsis and very scented. And this one's got a new growth here and a new growth here. They're only just getting going, so that one's quite a way off blooming. That won't be blooming for some time. But again, it's growing some roots near the base, having been repotted relatively recently. So that's the Miltoniopsis, just the 4. No reason why I won't get some more, but I'm going to need a bit more water. Right, now we're on to the larger Restrepias, and these may well still be wet as well. Most of these are actually in bloom. These are good sized blooms for Restrepias. Suffered a bit in the heat, this one, yeah, so we have got some paling on some of the leaves, but the newer ones are nice and green, so it's sort of coming back. This one's got a good pot full of roots, so this one dries relatively quickly because it's got a root system to help it. So you can have some. This is not bone dry, but with a plant this large, if I leave it till next time, it will be bone dry, and it's better to have this a little wetter than go totally dry. Even though it's cooler. Mind you, this one looks still soaking wet. Yeah, that one's still soaking wet. This is Howley, I believe. No, it's not. It's Handois. But again, attractive bloom. New growths are not looking bad now. This one suffered some new growths in the heat and lack of hydration. You'll get a crinkle on your leaves. Yeah. So, but more recent growths are not so bad. Relatively young plant, that one. But no water for you. Alright, then we get the big ones. That one's quite dry. Again, it's quite a large plant with quite a large root system, so it does use up its moisture quite quickly. You can tell how much this pot holds an awful lot. Well, it's nearly used up that water that I put in there. Now, this one's been reluctant to bloom lately. This is it's another Antinifera, and it's Hemsleyanna, it says there. And this one I've had some time, and relatively recently repotted, and it's only just starting to put up better leaves. It didn't like being repotted, but it had to be done. The media was starting to get, you know, too far gone, so that had to be done. That's that big one. And the last big one on this shelf is the one I've had the longest, and this was my first ever Restrepia, bought as a tiny little plant from Burnham's and grown on over quite a few years now. A lot of new growth, and this one, apart from in the heat wave, is in bloom nearly all the time. Now, these blooms are quite small, but they are incredibly attractive, and to my eye these look absolutely gorgeous, but they won't show up on the camera properly. The camera can't cope with those fine stripes, it just muddles them up. Anyway, and this has got, again, a hell of a root system in there, so it uses up its moisture quite quickly. I don't think this one has ever been still wet, if you know what I mean, and had to miss a run. It always uses up its moisture. And it takes a fair bit of getting wet as well. Pour the water through quite a bit. And I have to watch this one round the sides because there are parts of the pot where the water gets diverted because of the leaves and ends up not getting any water. So I always have to have a look around the pot and make sure it's got down into all the little places. Right, so that's that. And the next thing to do is dump the water I've got left, because I'm now changing to totally different plants and moving on to the Paphiopedilums, so they get a clean start, so they don't get any reuse from other types of plants with different types of media and different age media, so they just get a clean start. Part of the reason is older media in there, definitely, and in a couple of the others, as I pour that water through, that's going to drop the pH down. So whereas we started with whatever it was, 6.6, that water there is probably now down to about 6. So if I put that on my Paphiopedilums, that's too low. Yeah? So I will start afresh for those. Right, so that's that shelf done. I'll be back and we move on to the next one up. Alright, we'll start with some fresh water. The feed that all these plants get, I've always used the same feed, same levels for these plants over all the years I've had them without any... Oh, this Masdevallias opened. Oh wow. Well, that's actually... Now you're not going to be able to see that very well, I don't suspect, but you might... What I'll do is I'll start back here and push it towards the camera. At some point it will go out of focus, but it'll get as close as it possibly can, so hopefully you can see the patterning inside, and then it will go out of focus at some point. That's quite attractive. That's there's another bud coming up the top here. This is the one that's a nuisance. I got it at Rithlington, and it's Masdevallia decuman crossed with Vecchiana. As soon as I saw Vecchiana, I thought, oh no, you're going to die. That's quite a cool to cold grower, Vecchiana. That doesn't like getting warm at all. So this time of year it's fine. But whoever potted this up, one of the school children probably, was a bit lazy on the moss. And it's in quite large pieces of bark in an open mesh basket. It almost dries out daily, which might be a good thing, but not really. I prefer that to stay moist longer. Once this little round of blooms is over, I will probably take that out of there gently and put it in a mix more suited. But yeah, that's quite attractive. Good. Let's get a picture of that before it disappears. Now let's get on to the Paphiopedilums. This will be wet. This little thing is Paphiopedilum delanati, and it's vinny colour. And if it wasn't for the attractiveness of the leaves, I'd have dumped this a long time ago. It is a miniature, but it just will not grow roots. I inherited it with 0 roots. But it lives, and it's grown 2 nice new leaves this year, despite having... It might have actually pushed up a couple of short roots in there that haven't reached the edge of the pot, but That's still wet, so you don't need any. The other little miniature I've got, again this might still be wet. Yeah, that's still quite wet. This is Paphiopedilum tonsum. It's a young plant, but it's not going to grow large. So I'm just having a look down the middle there. Nah, that's a new leaf. Well, new leaf's good, but this one had 0 roots as well. But this one has pushed some roots down, or pushed root down. Maybe only one, but at least it's trying. Those two little miniatures were inherited from my daughter, because she couldn't grow them. But unfortunately, she'd let them get to the point where they were almost dead before she decided I could look after them. So what have we got here? That's still wet as well. Not doing very well with these. It makes life easier. This is growing a new leaf, so no bud yet. And because that's growing a new leaf, that leaf's going to have to get going and open before it's even going to think about pushing a bud out. So if this one's going to bloom, it's going to be quite a while. That's Paphiopedilum warden crossed with raisin wine. I've got a feeling that's actually been registered now, as long as the cross is that way round, otherwise it's a different plant. So it has bloomed once. If I can be bothered, I'll put pop-ups. Well, this is Magical Venus. I was going to say, I suspect this one will be dry. This one's got a nice bud coming at the moment, so yeah, we will have a bloom on this one down the line. This has grown quite a few new roots recently. Funny how they always make their way to the edge of the pot. Lovely one growing there. So I'm happy with the roots on this one. There's a rotten root there, but all of my paths will get repotted when the slightly better weather comes. Give them a better chance to get going, and any blooming probably will be over by then. Mainly just because these seem to do better if they're repotted frequently. They don't like stale media. And I'm trying to get them on like an annual cycle where they get repotted each year. They don't seem to mind being repotted. With big fleshy sort of terrestrial type roots, because they're hairy, they prefer the fresh media and they put up with the disturbance. It seems to sort of almost kick them going again. But this one's in a tiny little pot. This one's got a lot of roots. I'm happy with the root system on that. Not happy with the plant though. It's got that nasty brown mark on a relatively new leaf. That could be a bud. It might be another leaf. I've got a feeling that is a bud down in there, so that one might be going to bloom as well, but that's a possibility, not a definite. And now, because I've got my wet hands on it, I've got water down in there, so that's got to come out. Roger's patented method of getting water out of crowns, huff and puff. The last thing I want is water lying there at these sort of temperatures. I mean, the big circulating fans aren't on at the moment, only the little ones. So obviously the drying process is a lot slower. I suspect this one's still soaking wet as well. Now this one always seems to jam itself in its cover pot. This one's grown quite a few roots recently, which is quite good. It's got 2 new fans on it. This is Mordier, and this always grows 2 new fans, but it's still failed to maintain the previous 2 old ones. There's that much left of the old one, so it's still there, but this is still soaking wet, so this doesn't need any water. Nice bud coming on the first growth, and it should be followed by a bud on the second growth. It's never failed to do that. So yeah, that's my motley crew. And that's the end of that watering session. The next thing I've got to water is, on the list are the mounts, non-resting, and the holy clay pots if I can be bothered today, but if I'm going to leave anything till tomorrow, it'll be the holy clay pots. And I'm not going to film that, so all I was going to do was just, this is growing at quite a rate now. There's a few things just to sort of pull in. This is Dendrobium tetragonum, variety giganteum, says here, and we do have 2 nice buds pushing on the latest growth. So this was a young plant, easy to tell. you've got old tiny little pseudo bulbs, so grown from a seedling, highly likely, yeah. Bulbs getting slightly bigger, latest bulb considerably bigger than anything before. Now it's blooming size, yeah. So it was a young plant, but we've got 2 buds coming on that. These are going to be interesting. You can always Google the plant name and see what's coming soon, or you can be like me and patiently wait till they open. But that's quite an interesting bloom. Got a feeling it would come under the Latoria class, but not absolutely certain. So that's that one. There was nothing else up there to show, I don't think. No, the Masdevallia was the only new bloom, and that's come into this session. So yeah, I think that'll do for today. Camera's now in my way to get on with the watering the mounts and things, so that'll do. So a bit different as a Sunday morning chat, so not really a subject, you know, to chat about, more a look at some plants. But it was a convenient thing to film for me, so I'll get that one sorted out and then get on the computer, do that stuff and get it going, and then it can be biding its time while I get on with watering something else. And I'll see you next time.